Hey everyone and welcome to Storytime. My name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at the subreddit r/prorevenge, where people tell us their best stories on when they got revenge on someone or something they didn't like. If you're new around here, please do hit subscribe down below so that you never miss out on another video. But for now, let's sit back, relax and enjoy some pro-revenge stories. Scum of a man hires my unit to do a job. After, refused to pay us. So, I help ruin him. A few things. First, I am a security officer with a private investigator certification, which allows me to take PI, private investigator, cases, as long as it doesn't interfere with local police investigations. And any crimes that I witness must be reported to the police ASAP, so they can make an arrest. Private investigator cases come from a few sources. We are sometimes contracted by local police to do what's referred to as spotter work, where we are brought on active wide area investigations to do recon work and look but not interact with anything that might be involved with the case. Basically, we are just an extra pair of eyes. Or the local police will mix us in a surveillance operation, and we would follow low profile individuals and report their day-to-day activities. These are completely confidential. Then, there is client contracts. This is where corporate clients contract our company's personal investigations unit to investigate their employees' day-to-day activities while on the job, to see if there is some hint that an employee is committing a crime, and to report it if there is reasonable proof that an employee is breaking the law on company time. The job is to gather evidence to prove guilt or innocence. These aren't confidential, but we usually sign a non-disclosure agreement. Finally, there is personal contracts. When a person wants to hire a personal investigator to do a job, it's usually something along the lines of a husband or wife suspects the spouse is cheating on them and wants some kind of proof. Or someone is looking for a relative or lost family and is trying to reconnect with them. There is no disclosure agreement, and it's up to the client to draw a disclosure agreement. Most don't, but we keep quiet as professional courtesy. Okay, now that the job description is done, let me tell you what happened. About 3 years ago, I had been hired to do a personal contract. The client, a rich, sleazy snob, was apparently stupidly rich. He hired my unit. When I say my unit, I mean the unit I work with, a 5-man team. He believed his wife was cheating on him with other people, and he wanted proof of this so he could start his divorce process with solid evidence. He contracted us in a 6-month contract, and was to pay the company X amount of dollars upon completion. So, we set up surveillance cameras all over his large house and in the woman's car with the client's permission. We had at least one of the team tailing her at all times. Good times. Day in and out, we watch their lives. And in this line of work, you either get detached or emotionally invested, like watching a soap opera. As we watched them, we quickly saw this lady was a freaking saint. She volunteered at a soup kitchen and a children's hospital. She helped with local churches' canned food drives. Those kind of things. She was the perfect definition of what a good human should be. On the other hand, the husband was a total douchebag. He was the one we caught many times bringing women into his house. Sometimes he would bring 2 or 3 girls in one day, and that was only what was recorded in the house. We arrive at the 4-month mark, which is basically where we show all the evidence and give the 3/4 report. We show him everything that we found and have a 6-hour debrief with video and audio support, showing that she hadn't done any wrongdoing other than a speeding ticket and a few double park situations. After we concluded the debrief, he looked stupefied. He says, "So you didn't catch her cheating? That was the point of me hiring you." My boss, our captain, turns to him with a serious stare, which is perhaps in the most serious and badass looking face I have ever seen in that man, and said, You hired us to investigate your wife. You're unhappy that your wife is an honest and faithful woman? The snob is visibly annoyed. He stands up and is getting his jacket when my captain says, "Look, there is still 2 months on the contract. We will keep tailing her and we'll meet again after our contract is up and give you any updates." The snob turns to him and says, "Don't bother, this is over. I'm ending it. Come when she is not home and get your equipment out." So, a week later, we did exactly that. Now, fruit for thought. When contracts like his are made, a small portion is paid upfront as commission fee, and the rest is paid at the end of the contract's allotted time. In his case, it is 6 months. Now, pay works like this. The commission is divided up between each PI as a bonus to our salary, and the salary is what we get from the company to get us through the completion of the contract. The remaining balance after being paid by the client is then divided into a cut for completion for the PIs and a cut for the office. Good money when done right. So, fast forward to the next payday after the contract is officially over. My unit gets a call from our office to come in on the next payday as there is an emergency meeting regarding us and the last contract. We get there and find out Snob pulled the funding and refused to pay us for the work. So, we're getting paid, just not with the completion bonus. We all left super angry. We went to lunch and brainstormed how to get even with this douchebag. Then, we remembered all the house footage of his dirty deeds. At first, we wanted to blackmail him, but that's low and we're better than that. I remembered the wife, so I reached out to her. I set a date to sit down and explain everything to her. I showed her the videos. She cried for a good half hour. I think I broke her whole world. It was gut-wrenching. I then advised her to get a lawyer and proceeded to give her all the collected evidence and my business card. Aftermath. Fast forward about 6 months. I'm called into court as my company is suing him for fraud, breach of contract, and unpaid dues. My company wins the case easily, as his lawyer's argument was that we failed to deliver the result he wanted. But we weren't hired to deliver a product. We were hired to observe and report. We got paid in the end. I was contacted by the wife, who thanked me for all the evidence. She got a divorce. Because of all the evidence I gave her, she got almost everything. His huge house, both cars, and a huge cash sum. Moral of this story? Don't try to screw over people who specialize in gathering evidence and reconnaissance. Imagine hiring private investigators and allowing them to go over your house and everything. Their literal job is to monitor you. And then you try and get them to prove that your wife is cheating when you are clearly cheating. What? How stupid can you be? My grandpa destroys a wall and crazy neighbor pays for it. Before I was born, my grandpa had just retired and decided, screw it, I'm going to live in the middle of a mountain that's in the middle of nowhere. He bought a piece of land far away from any city or village and started building a house. His only neighbors were an old lady and a crazy idiot. After half a year, he decided to permanently move in there and started building more and more things to accommodate himself. One of the things he built was a wall around his property and an outdoor toilet. This will be important later on. During this time, his crazy neighbor was trying to sell property. My grandpa offered to buy it from him, but the guy declined, asking for 10 times more than my grandfather offered. This got into a sort of argument and ended all communication. Now, the crazy dude was out to get my grandpa. He would call communal services and make police officers and inspectors come on a 2-hour ride for every possible thing he could. We are talking about stuff like leaving a dog without the leash in a walled-off backyard or having leftover building materials on road, which my grandpa also built. Before that, they had frickin' dirt road. Now, my grandpa did not mind, but every time police was involved, they had to go over the backyard belonging to the old lady, since works were going on and crazy neighbor sealed off a gate connecting his and my grandpa's property with garbage. It did not look nice or smell nice, but my grandpa was busy with other stuff to keep removing it every night, only for the dude to rebuild it next morning. Even though my grandpa did not care, the lady did, and she was on my grandpa's side. So one day, when the officers came, she asked a couple of questions to these lovely people. She then contacts my grandpa. She learned two things. First of all, since the wall was built on my grandfather's land, he had all the rights to it. He could destroy it completely if he wanted. Second, filling a gate in the wall with stuff was illegal, but my grandfather did not have the right to build a gate into someone else's yard without explicit permission either, and pursuing it in court would only end up with having to seal it off. She informs my grandpa about all of this, and soon they hatch a plan. They wait for 2 to 3 months for heavy autumn rains to start drowning the land. Then, the old lady files a formal complaint about the smell of the garbage. My grandpa pleads guilty and signs off a document that legally forces him to destroy the gate and remove the garbage from it. Now, the very same day my grandpa signs off on the documents, the biggest storms of the year starts. It rained for 7 days before inspectors could come to remove the garbage and the gate. Now, my grandfather had previously cemented 3 of the 4 drains that were built in the wall. This, plus the mountain being steep, resulted in a wall acting like a dam for all the water that was coming in. Almost the entire yard was filled with water, eventually even lifting everything up from the outdoor toilet my grandfather had built. His neighbor tried everything he could to stop the inspectors from destroying that garbage-filled gate. He pleaded and pleaded, but he could do nothing. He did not own the wall, and he was the one making all the communal calls, and the inspectors grew to hate him. Furthermore, my grandfather had pleaded guilty, meaning that any form of complaint on the decision of the court from a third party was impossible and deemed invalid at this point. After the inspectors removed the gate, a small sea of poop, construction materials, and water poured into the yard of the douchebag, and he ended up watching the water destroy his entire yard, all while my grandpa and nice old lady were drinking tea from her balcony. Today, while telling me the story he told me, it felt like God unleashing the flood upon the sinful world back then. Which made me chuckle because I know he is an atheist like me. Aftermath was even better. Needless to say, the guy needed to pay thousands to repair all the water damage and cleaning he had to do. All the while, my grandfather's and the old lady's house were completely untouched by any of it since they were on a lot higher ground. The best part is that since he admitted he was the one filling the gate with garbage to the inspectors, they made a note of that, and sometime later, he received a written order from the court that he had to repay my grandpa for any property damage because of that. He ended up going to court, losing after the old lady testified in my grandfather's favor, and having to rebuild the gate that was destroyed along with all the court fees. The guy moved out as soon as he could, and from what the new owner said, he sold it for less than half of what my grandfather offered him. I'm so confused as to why this guy built an outdoor toilet though. Like, are they still a thing, or is it just for show or something? Did he actually use that? The charming story of how a neighbor came to be jacked up. This story isn't about me, but my dear old dad. Back in the day, he used to be a plumber. He then went on to join the military, where he sustained various injuries/chemical exposure. Anyway, this happened during the time he was fighting for his disability. On occasion, he would do side jobs just to get by. It was very painful/difficult work for him, but alas, the bills needed paid. At the time, he had a neighbor up the road who needed some pretty serious work done in his home and offered to pay my dad a bit over $3,000 for the labor. To be frank, $3,000 was a bit on the low end for the work, but my dad figured, hey, help a neighbor out, and he really needed to make some extra cash. The holidays were coming up, a little over 2 months before Christmas. The guy buys the supplies. My dad does the labor, with promises that he'll be paid when it is finished. You already know where this is going. Surprise, surprise, the work gets finished, and the guy doesn't pay up. Not only does this guy not pay my dad, but he has the gall to laugh at my dad and ask him what he's going to do about it since the work was under the table. Neighbor be darned. Oh, was he, my dad, ever angry. I remember when he flat out told me, "That son of a witch might not ever pay me, but he's going to be paying someone that $3,000. Just you watch, sweets." And he got to work. He couldn't spend a lot of time on his feet, but he had quite a few hours to kill. And he started planning this dude's comeuppance. He went to the store and bought a load of jacks, the kind that come in the game of jacks, with the rubber ball and whatnot. He then proceeded to spend the next couple of weeks sharpening them up and making the ends into little spikes. Every time he would drive by this guy's house, he'd casually toss a handful out the window into this guy's driveway. You can imagine, this guy was constantly getting flat tires and having to continuously repair and replace them. Fast forward to Christmas Day. My dad calls me up, cackling hysterically. So I ask him what's up. This is actually one of my favourite memories of him. He tells me, "Remember that neighbour? The one that screwed me over? Well, I just drove by his house, and he, the wife, and the kids are all dressed up for church, standing in the front yard by their car, and it's got a couple flats. You see, I think he wised up, because he started parking in the grass, but the guy didn't know I threw them in the yard too." I love my dad. Hey everyone, I hope you all had a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to check out some other videos, then click on screen right now, or check out the playlist down below. If you enjoyed that video, then please do leave a like, and if you want to submit your own stories, then you can do so by joining the Discord in the top link in the description. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon.